The ring felt wrong. It was a cold, alien weight on my finger. Not the heavy, significant weight I remembered from the jewelry store, but something light and cheap. I twisted it, and the large central stone caught the light with a rainbow flash that seemed too garish, too loud. My heart started a slow, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. Mark, my fiancé, was beaming beside me, his arm wrapped tightly around my shoulders. We were at his parents' house for our engagement party. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and champagne. Laughter and chatter filled the living room, but all I could hear was a buzzing in my ears. A single sentence echoed in my mind, something I had overheard just an hour ago. I had been walking past the study, the door slightly ajar. My mother-in-law, Carol, was on the phone. Her voice was a low, venomous hiss. "She deserves nothing real," she had said. I froze, my hand on the doorknob, thinking she was talking about a piece of furniture or a party favor. But then she added, "It looks close enough. She'll never know the difference." A chill had snaked down my spine then, but I had dismissed it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Carol had never liked me, but she wouldn't do something truly awful. Not something like this. Now, feeling the slick, glassy surface of the stone under my thumb, I knew. She had done it. I looked at Mark, his face glowing with a happiness so pure it felt like a punch to my gut. How could I tell him? How could I shatter this perfect moment with such an ugly accusation? I felt a wave of nausea. I needed to get away, to think. I gently removed his arm from my shoulder. "I'm just going to get some water," I murmured. He nodded, distracted by his uncle clapping him on the back. I escaped to the kitchen, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the counter. The ring flashed under the fluorescent lights, its synthetic brilliance mocking me. Carol had taken the beautiful, timeless diamond Mark had chosen with his late grandmother's inheritance money and replaced it with this, a piece of glass, because she believed I deserved nothing real. The insult was so profound, so deeply personal, it stole my breath. This wasn't just about a ring. It was a declaration. In her eyes, I was fake. I was worthless. A quiet, cold anger began to bloom in my chest, pushing aside the panic. She was not going to get away with this. I, 26F, had been with Mark, 28M, for 4 years. Our relationship was the one solid thing in my life. He was kind, steady, and he loved me in a way that made me feel safe. His mother, Carol, was another story entirely. From the moment Mark introduced us, she had treated me with a cool, polite disdain. I was never smart enough, never ambitious enough, never from the right kind of family. I worked as a librarian, a job I loved, but to Carol, it was a quaint, unimpressive profession. Her own daughter, Amy, was a corporate lawyer, a fact Carol mentioned in nearly every conversation. I had tried for years to win her over. I helped her plan parties. I remembered her birthday. I listened patiently to her endless complaints about the gardener or the dry cleaner. Nothing worked. I remained the girl who was not good enough for her perfect son. The proposal had been a surprise. Mark had taken me to the botanical gardens, the place we had our first date. He got down on one knee and opened a velvet box. Inside was the most beautiful ring I had ever seen. It was a vintage-inspired design with a central diamond that shone with a deep, clear light, flanked by smaller, intricate details. He told me he had used the money his grandmother left him, specifically for this purpose. His grandmother had adored him, and she had always disliked Carol, a detail that I now understood held more significance than I had realized. The ring was more than just a ring. It was a legacy. It was a piece of his family's history, given to me with love. The day before the engagement party, Carol had insisted on taking the ring to be professionally cleaned and checked. She'd said it was a family tradition. "We want it to sparkle its brightest for the big debut," she had chirped, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Mark, ever trusting of his mother, had agreed immediately. He had carefully handed her the velvet box. I had felt a flicker of unease then, a small, warning voice in the back of my mind. But I had silenced it. I was being uncharitable. I told myself. She was trying to be included. I had let her take it. And now, this piece of cut glass was on my finger, and the real ring, my ring, was gone. I took a deep, shaky breath in the quiet of the kitchen. I had to be smart about this. A hysterical accusation would get me nowhere. Mark would defend his mother. The family would see me as ungrateful and dramatic. I needed proof. I slipped the ring off my finger. It felt ridiculously light. I held it up to the light again, turning it over and over. There was no warmth to it, no depth. It was a lie I could hold in my hand. My mind raced, trying to piece together a plan. First, I needed to confirm my suspicion beyond any doubt. That meant going to a jeweler. A different jeweler. Someone who had no connection to Carol or her family. I put the ring back on, the feel of it making my skin crawl. I walked back into the living room, forcing a smile onto my face. I found Mark and told him I had a splitting headache. "I think I'm going to head home, darling," I said, pressing my fingers to my temple. "It's been a long day." He looked concerned. "Are you sure? Do you want me to come with you?" he asked. No. You stay and enjoy your party," I insisted. "I just need some quiet and a couple of aspirins. I'll call you in the morning." I kissed him, the lie tasting bitter in my mouth. I said my goodbyes to his father and a few aunts and uncles, carefully avoiding Carol. I saw her across the room, watching me with a smug, knowing look in her eyes. It was all the confirmation I needed. As I walked out the door, I felt her gaze on my back, cold and triumphant. She thought she had won. She had no idea what she had just started. The drive home was a blur. My mind was a whirlwind of anger and hurt. The sheer audacity of her actions was staggering. To not only steal from me, but to replace the symbol of my future with a cheap imitation. It was a calculated act of humiliation. She wanted me to wear this fake ring, to show it off to my friends and family, all while she knew the truth. She wanted me to be a walking fraud, a reflection of how she saw me. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The hurt was a physical ache in my chest, but the anger was a fire, and it was growing hotter by the second. This was no longer just about a piece of jewelry. It was about my dignity. When I got back to my small apartment, the first thing I did was call my best friend, Jess. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, how's the party? Are you officially a future daughter-in-law?" she asked, her voice bright and cheerful. My own voice broke as I answered. "Jess, something terrible has happened." I told her everything. The light feeling of the ring, the overheard comment, Carol's insistence on cleaning it. I told her about the look on Carol's face as I left the party. Jess was silent for a moment after I finished. Then she said, "That woman is a monster, a literal Disney villain monster." "Am I crazy?" I asked, my voice small. "Am I making this all up in my head because I know she doesn't like me?" "No, you are not crazy," Jess said firmly. "Your gut is screaming at you for a reason. Carol has been gunning for you for years. This is a power move. A really, really cruel one." "What do I do?" I whispered. "First thing tomorrow, you go to a jeweler," she said, her voice turning practical. "Not just any jeweler. Go to that old guy downtown, Mr. Henderson. He's been in business for 50 years and he doesn't gossip. Get a verbal appraisal. Don't ask for paperwork yet. Just find out what it is. Once you know for sure, then we make a plan." Her calm, logical response was exactly what I needed. It grounded me. "Okay," I said, taking a breath. "Okay, I'll do that." "And Sarah?" Jess added. "Don't say a word to Mark. Not yet. He's going to want to believe his mother. You need undeniable proof before you bring him into this." She was right. I knew she was right. Mark loved his mother, and his first instinct would be to smooth things over, to find a misunderstanding where there was only malice. I couldn't face that. Not yet. We talked for a little while longer, Jess offering words of support and outrage on my behalf. By the time we hung up, the fire in my chest had forged itself into a cold, hard resolve. I was done trying to win Carol's approval. I was done being the polite, accommodating girlfriend. She had declared war. I was going to finish it. The next morning, I woke up with a feeling of dread. The fake ring was sitting on my nightstand, winking in the morning sun. I couldn't bring myself to put it on. I felt like it would burn my skin. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. I told my boss I had a migraine, which wasn't entirely a lie. My head was pounding from stress and lack of sleep. I waited until 10 o'clock when I knew Mr. Henderson's shop would be open. The drive downtown felt like a journey to a verdict. I parked the car and took a few deep breaths before getting out. The small velvet box felt heavy in my purse. Mr. Henderson's shop was quiet and smelled of polish and old wood. He was a small, elderly man with kind eyes and a magnifying glass attached to his spectacles. He greeted me with a gentle smile. "Good morning, how can I help you?" he asked. My hands were shaking as I placed the box on the glass countertop. "I was hoping you could take a look at this for me," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I just want to know what it is." I opened the box. He picked up the ring with a pair of tweezers and placed it on a black velvet cloth under a bright lamp. He adjusted his magnifying glass and leaned in close, turning the ring over and over. The silence in the shop was deafening. I held my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. He was quiet for what felt like an eternity. He poked at the stone with a small metal tool, then looked at it from another angle. Finally, he looked up at me, his kind eyes now filled with something that looked like pity. "Well," he began slowly, "it's a very pretty piece of costume jewelry." The words hit me like a physical blow. Costume jewelry. The setting is silver-plated and the stone is a very well-cut piece of cubic zirconia. He continued gently. "It's a convincing replica, to be sure. But it's not a diamond." I stared at him, the room starting to spin. Even though I had known, hearing it confirmed was devastating. "Are you absolutely sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. He nodded. "I've been doing this for 52 years, my dear. I know a diamond when I see one. This is not a diamond." I must have looked as broken as I felt because he added, "I'm very sorry if this is not the news you were hoping for." I just nodded, unable to speak. I numbly paid his small fee for the verbal appraisal and stumbled out of the shop, the velvet box clutched in my hand. I sat in my car, parked on a busy downtown street, and I just cried. I cried for the beautiful, real ring that was gone. I cried for the betrayal from the woman who was supposed to become my family. And I cried for the difficult conversation I knew I now had to have with Mark. The man I loved was about to be caught in the middle of an impossible situation. I drove home on autopilot, my mind a blank slate of shock and grief. When I got back to my apartment, I saw I had 2 missed calls from Mark. I couldn't bring myself to call him back. Not yet. I needed to compose myself. I needed to decide exactly what I was going to say. Jess was right. I needed a plan. Accusing his mother without irrefutable proof would be a disaster. The jeweler's opinion was proof to me, but it was still my word against Carol's. Mark could easily believe that I had misunderstood the jeweler, or that the jeweler was mistaken. I needed something more, something Carol couldn't deny. My mind kept replaying her words. She deserves nothing real. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. What had I ever done to her to inspire such hatred? I had been nothing but kind and respectful. It was then that a new thought began to form, cold and sharp. This wasn't just about her disliking me. This was about something else. The ring was purchased with money from Mark's grandmother. Carol had a notoriously difficult relationship with her own mother-in-law. Maybe this was about more than just me. Maybe this was about erasing a legacy she had always resented. And if she was willing to swap the ring, she was probably willing to sell the real one. The thought made me feel sick, but it also gave me a direction. If she sold it, there might be a trail. That evening, Mark came over. He had a worried look on his face. You didn't answer my calls. I was worried about you, he said, pulling me into a hug. Is your headache any better? I leaned into him, wanting to draw strength from his presence, but all I felt was the chasm that had opened up between us. I'm okay, I lied, just tired. We ordered takeout and sat on the couch, a movie playing on the television that neither of us was watching. The silence between us was heavy with all the things I wasn't saying. I kept looking at his face, the face I loved so much, and wondered if he would believe me, if he would choose me. Is everything all right, Sarah? He finally asked, turning to face me. You seem a million miles away. I took a deep breath. It was time. I couldn't carry this alone anymore. Mark, we need to talk about the ring, I said, my voice quiet but firm. He looked down at my bare hand and frowned. Why aren't you wearing it? He asked. Because it's not the ring you gave me, I said, my heart pounding. I explained everything. My suspicion, the lightweight, the overheard comment, and finally my trip to the jeweler. I watched his face as I spoke, saw the confusion turn to disbelief, and then to a closed-off, defensive expression. Sarah, that's a crazy thing to say, he said, shaking his head. My mom would never do that. Mark, I heard her, I insisted, and a professional jeweler confirmed it. It's cubic zirconia. Maybe he was wrong, he shot back, his voice rising. Or maybe you're just stressed out and you've gotten this idea in your head because you know she's a little particular. Particular? I asked, my own voice rising to match his. She's been openly hostile to me for 4 years, Mark, and now she's stolen a family heirloom and replaced it with a fake. That's not particular, that's malicious. You're calling my mother a thief, he said, his jaw tight. Based on what? You overheard something you might have misunderstood, and you went to some random jeweler? Did you even think to talk to me first? I'm talking to you now, I cried, frustrated tears welling in my eyes. And you're not listening to me. You're defending her. Of course I'm defending her. She's my mother, he yelled. And she loves you. She was so excited about the engagement. The lie was so blatant, so absurd, that it shocked me into silence. He actually believed that. He had filtered out every backhanded compliment, every dismissive gesture, every cold look she had ever given me. He saw what he wanted to see. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of loneliness. I was completely on my own in this. I want you to call her, I said, my voice suddenly cold and quiet. I want you to ask her. He looked taken aback by my tone. What? No, I'm not going to call my mom and accuse her of being a criminal. Then I will, I said, reaching for my phone. He snatched it from my hand. No, you're not going to do that. This is insane. We're not going to ruin our engagement party weekend with this paranoia. Paranoia. The word was like a slap in the face. He thought I was hysterical. He thought I was making it up. The cold resolve from the night before settled back into my bones, stronger this time. I looked him straight in the eye. Give me my phone, Mark. He hesitated, then handed it back to me. A stubborn look on his face. I didn't call her. I knew it would be pointless. Instead, I stood up. I think you should go, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. We have nothing more to talk about until you are willing to believe me. He stared at me, shocked. You're kicking me out? I'm asking you to leave, I corrected him. I need to think, and I can't do that when you're looking at me like I'm crazy. He left, slamming the door behind him. I sank onto the couch, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me. The first battle was over, and I had lost. But the war was just beginning. Jess was right. I needed more than just my word. I needed proof so absolute that no one, not even Mark, could deny it. The next few days were a blur of quiet, methodical investigation. Mark sent a few texts, alternating between angry and conciliatory. This is tearing me apart, one read. Can't we just talk? another pleaded. I didn't respond. Talking was useless until I had something concrete. My first step was to think about opportunity. When and where could Carol have made the switch? The party was at a high-end hotel, the Grandview. She had the ring for over 24 hours before the party. She could have done it any time. But then I remembered something else she'd said on that phone call, a snippet I had almost forgotten. I'll handle it at the venue. It's easier that way. Why would it be easier at the venue? It didn't make sense. Unless she wasn't just swapping it. Unless she was meeting someone. The idea that she had sold it took root in my mind. It explained the need for a specific location. It was riskier, but it would allow for a quick, anonymous transaction. I started to think about Carol's financial situation. She and Mark's father lived in a beautiful house and drove luxury cars, but I had overheard snippets of conversations about market downturns and tightening our belts. It was always said in a joking way, but maybe it wasn't a joke. Maybe they were in trouble. A vintage diamond ring, especially one with a family history, could be worth a significant amount of money. Enough to solve a temporary cash flow problem, perhaps. I decided to start with the hotel. On Tuesday, I took my lunch break and drove to the Grandview. It was a large, imposing building with a revolving door and a lobby filled with marble and brass. I felt small and out of place, but I walked purposefully to the front desk. "Hello," I said to the polished woman behind the counter. "I was at a party here on Saturday night, an engagement party for Mark and Sarah." I used my own name, hoping it would add a layer of authenticity. "I think I may have misplaced something, and I was wondering if I could speak to someone in security." The woman gave me a polite, professional smile. "Of course. Let me see if Mr. Harris is available." She made a quick phone call, and a few minutes later, a man in a crisp security uniform emerged from an office behind the desk. He was tall and broad-shouldered with a calm, no-nonsense expression. His name tag read, "David Harris, Head of Security." "How can I help you, miss?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. I explained that I had been at the party and that I was worried I had lost something of great sentimental value. I didn't want to mention the ring directly, not yet. I decided to be vague. "It was in a small dark blue velvet box," I said. "I'm just retracing my steps. I was hoping you might have security footage of the public areas from that night." He shook his head. "I'm sorry, miss. We can't show security footage to the public. Privacy policies." My heart sank. "I understand," I said, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. "Is there any other way you can help? A lost and found, perhaps?" "We can check," he said. "But a small box like that, it could have easily been thrown away." He seemed ready to dismiss me, but something in my face must have given away my desperation. He paused, his expression softening slightly. "What was the party name again?" "The Jensen Party," I said. "For Mark Jensen and Sarah Miller." His eyes sharpened with a flicker of recognition. "The Jensen Party, in the Rose Ballroom." He looked at me more closely. "I remember your mother-in-law," he said slowly. "Mrs. Jensen. She was acting a little unusually." My pulse quickened. "Unusually how?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "She spent a lot of time near the service corridors," he said, his brow furrowed in thought. "Away from her own party. I had to ask her to return to the ballroom at one point. She said she was looking for the restroom, but she was headed in the opposite direction, toward the loading docks." This was it. This was the lead I needed. "The loading docks?" I repeated. He nodded. It was strange. I made a mental note of it. We get all sorts of people trying to access the back areas. I decided to take a risk. My voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Mr. Harris, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I lost a box. I think Mrs. Jensen, my fiancé's mother, swapped something inside the box. Something valuable. And I think she met someone near those loading docks." He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I thought he was going to tell me I was crazy, just like Mark had. But instead, he just nodded slowly. That would explain it, he said, more to himself than to me. He looked around the lobby, then leaned in slightly. My shift ends in an hour. Meet me at the coffee shop across the street. I can't make any promises, but I'll see what I can find. I felt a surge of hope so intense it almost made me dizzy. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much. He just gave me a short, professional nod and walked back to his office. I had found an ally. An unexpected but potentially powerful ally. The hour I spent waiting in the coffee shop was the longest of my life. I ordered a latte I didn't drink and stared out the window, watching the entrance of the hotel. What if he didn't show? What if he changed his mind? What if he told his manager and I got in trouble for making false accusations? My mind was a hive of anxious thoughts. But then, exactly 1 hour later, I saw him. He had changed out of his uniform and was now wearing a simple jacket and jeans. He walked across the street and into the coffee shop, spotting me immediately. He sat down opposite me, placing a plain manila envelope on the table between us. My eyes were glued to it. You were right, he said, his voice low. She met someone. My breath caught in my throat. You saw it? He nodded. I pulled the footage from camera 7. It covers the back corridor leading to the east loading dock. At 8:15 p.m., Mrs. Jensen walked down that corridor. A few minutes later, a man came in through the loading dock door. He wasn't a hotel employee. They spoke for less than a minute. She handed him a small dark object, and he handed her a white envelope. Then he left, and she returned to the party. It was exactly as I had imagined. The scene played out in my head, stark and ugly. Carol, in her expensive party dress, skulking in a service corridor to sell a piece of her own family's history. The white envelope. Did it look like it had money in it? I asked. It was thick, David said. Looked like cash to me, but I can't prove that from the video. He pushed the manila envelope toward me. This is for you. A copy of the footage. I'm not supposed to do this. If my boss finds out, I could lose my job. I looked at him, my heart overflowing with gratitude. Why are you doing this for me? I asked. He shrugged, a small, sad smile on his face. My ex-wife's mother was a piece of work. Some people just like to watch the world burn as long as they're holding the match. You looked like you were getting burned. He stood up. Good luck, miss. I hope you get justice. And with that, he was gone, leaving me with the envelope. The proof. I didn't open the envelope right away. I took it home, my hands shaking so much I could barely fit the key in my door. I put it on my kitchen table and stared at it. It felt like a bomb. Everything was going to change once I opened it, once I showed it to Mark. Our life as we knew it was over. There was no coming back from this. The thought was terrifying, but it was also liberating. The charade was over. The pretense that we could all be one big, happy family was about to be shattered. I was about to choose my own peace over their dysfunctional peace. I made myself a cup of tea, my movements slow and deliberate. I sat down at the table and finally, carefully, opened the clasp on the envelope. Inside was a small USB drive. My laptop was on the coffee table. I walked over, sat down, and plugged it in. A single video file appeared on the screen. I clicked on it. The video was grainy, black and white, and silent. But it was clear. There was the corridor. There was Carol, looking left and right before scurrying toward the door. The timestamp in the corner read 8:15:32 p.m. A man in a baseball cap appeared. The exchange was quick, furtive. A small dark box for a thick white envelope. My ring for a wad of cash. Then they were gone. I watched it again. And again. And again. The silent, grainy footage was the coldest, hardest truth I had ever seen. There was no misunderstanding this. There was no explaining it away. It was proof, absolute and undeniable. My phone buzzed on the table. It was Mark. I looked at his name on the screen, and for the first time, I felt no conflict, no pain, just a quiet, steely resolve. I was ready. I answered the call. Sarah? Thank God, he said, his voice a torrent of relief. I've been so worried. I'm so sorry about how I acted. I was a jerk. Can I please come over? We need to fix this. Yes, I said, my voice calm and even. You should come over, Mark. There's something you need to see. He arrived 20 minutes later, a bouquet of apologetic roses in his hand. He looked tired and stressed. I hate this, he said, setting the flowers on the counter. I hate fighting with you. I love you. I love you too, I said, and it was true. I loved the man I thought he was, but I didn't know if that man still existed. Sit down, Mark. He sat on the couch, watching me with wary eyes. I didn't say a word. I just turned my laptop around so he could see the screen. I pressed play. He leaned forward, squinting at the grainy footage. I watched his face as he saw his mother, elegant in her party dress, scurrying down a dirty service corridor. I saw the moment of recognition, the confusion. Then I saw him watch the exchange, the box for the envelope. His whole body went rigid. The color drained from his face. The video ended. He stared at the blank screen for a long, silent moment. Play it again, he whispered. I played it again. He watched it with a new, horrifying clarity. When it was over, he leaned back, looking utterly broken. He put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. I don't understand. He mumbled into his palms. Why would she do this? She needed money, I said quietly. And she hates me. It was a 2-for-1 deal for her. Get some cash and humiliate me at the same time. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a pain so deep it mirrored my own. The ring, my grandmother's ring. She sold it. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of dawning horror. Yes, I said. And she put a piece of glass on my finger and told me I deserved nothing real. He flinched as if I had struck him. He finally understood. He finally saw his mother for who she truly was. Not just particular, but cruel. A thief. A liar. I am so sorry, Sarah, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. I am so sorry I didn't believe you. I went and sat beside him, but I didn't touch him. The space between us was still there, filled with his doubt and her betrayal. I'm sorry too, Mark, I said, because now we have to decide what to do about it. The apology was nice. It was necessary, but it wasn't enough. The damage was done, not just by her, but by his refusal to trust me. Now, the question was not just about getting justice from Carol. It was about whether our own relationship could possibly survive this. We sat in silence for a long time. Mark eventually stopped crying, but he looked like a ghost. He just kept staring at the laptop screen as if hoping the video would change. What do we do? He finally asked again, his voice hoarse. Do we call the police? I had thought about that. Part of me, the angry, vengeful part, wanted to see her in handcuffs. But I knew it would be a messy, public disaster that would tear his family apart. And as much as I despised Carol, I didn't want to hurt his father or his other relatives who had been nothing but kind to me. No, I said slowly. I don't think that's the right move. Not yet. This needs to be handled within the family first. But it needs to be handled. What do you mean? He asked. I mean she doesn't get away with this, I said, my voice hardening. She doesn't get to pretend this didn't happen. She has to face what she did, and everyone has to know what she did. A look of dread crossed his face. You want to tell everyone? My dad? My aunt and uncle? Yes, I said. They deserve to know who she is, and she deserves to be exposed. We are having a family meeting. You, me, your mom, your dad, and your Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben was his father's brother, a quiet, respected man who was the unofficial patriarch of the family. He was fair, and his opinion carried enormous weight. If he knew the truth, Carol would have nowhere to hide. Mark looked terrified. "Sarah, this will destroy her. It will destroy our family." "She destroyed any chance of me being a part of this family when she sold my ring and called me a fake." I countered, my voice sharp. "She made this choice, Mark, not me. All I'm doing is turning on the lights so everyone can see what's been happening in the dark." I stood up and started pacing. "We are going to your parents' house for dinner on Sunday. You are going to tell them we have something important to discuss and that Uncle Ben needs to be there. You are not going to tell them what it's about. And at that dinner, I am going to confront her." He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else, respect. The broken, apologetic man was gone, replaced by someone who was seeing me, really seeing me for the first time. He was seeing the steel in my spine that had been there all along, hidden under layers of politeness and a desperate need to be liked. "Okay," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Okay, we'll do it your way." I stopped pacing and looked at him. "This isn't about my way, Mark. This is about the truth. Are you with me on this? 100%? Because if you waver, if you try to protect her even a little bit, then we have a much bigger problem than just this ring." He stood up and faced me, his expression grim but resolute. "I'm with you," he said. 100%. She has to answer for this. I see that now. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But a small, cold part of me knew that the final test would come on Sunday, when he was in the same room as his mother, and he had to choose a side, once and for all. The days leading up to Sunday were the most tense of my life. Mark made the call. He told his father that we needed to have a serious family discussion and that it was important for Uncle Ben to be there. His father, a man who hated conflict, had sounded confused but had agreed. Carol, apparently, had been suspicious. Mark told me she had called him several times, trying to pry information out of him. "Is Sarah still upset about her headache?" she had asked, her voice dripping with false concern. "Is everything all right with you two?" Mark, to his credit, had been firm. "We'll talk on Sunday, Mom," was all he would say. Each time he recounted one of these calls to me, I could see the strain it was putting on him. He was being torn in two, and a part of me felt guilty for putting him in this position. But the larger part of me knew it was necessary. This was a poison that had to be drawn out. I spent Saturday with Jess. I showed her the video. She watched it, her jaw tightening. "Good," she said when it was over. "This is perfect. She can't talk her way out of this." We spent the afternoon rehearsing what I would say. Jess played the part of Carol, throwing out denials and gaslighting comments. "I would never do such a thing. Sarah, you must be mistaken," Jess said in a high, theatrical voice. "Then how do you explain this video, Carol?" I practiced saying, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's not me. The video is doctored. This girl is trying to tear our family apart," Jess shrieked, making me laugh despite the tension. "It helps to practice," she said, dropping the act. "Get the emotions out now so you can be calm and cold tomorrow. You need to be the sanest person in the room." She was right. I needed to be unshakable. I couldn't let Carol's hysterics or Mark's father's discomfort derail me. I had the truth on my side. I just had to present it clearly and without emotion. On Sunday evening, we drove to his parents' house. I had the fake ring in my purse and my laptop in its bag. Mark was silent the entire drive, his hands gripping the steering wheel. As we pulled into the long driveway, I put my hand on his arm. "Are you ready?" I asked. He took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm ready." We walked to the front door. He took my hand, his palms sweaty but his grip firm. This was it. The atmosphere inside was thick with unspoken questions. Mark's father, Tom, greeted us with a forced heartiness. Uncle Ben was already there, sitting in an armchair, a thoughtful expression on his face. And then there was Carol. She came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron, a bright, brittle smile plastered on her face. "Sarah, darling, so good to see you feeling better," she said, coming toward me for a hug. I didn't flinch, but I didn't return the embrace either. I just stood there, a block of ice, until she pulled away, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. She knew something was wrong. We sat down for dinner. The conversation was stilted and awkward. Tom and Carol tried to talk about the weather, about a neighbor's new car, about anything other than the giant, unspoken issue hanging in the air. Mark and I barely spoke. I just pushed food around my plate, my appetite gone. Uncle Ben was quiet, watching everyone with his intelligent, observant eyes. Finally, when the strained dessert of apple pie was served, I decided it was time. I put down my fork and looked at Mark. He gave me a slight, almost imperceptible nod. I took a deep breath and turned to face Carol. "Carol," I began, my voice clear and steady in the suddenly silent room. "I'm glad we're all here, because there's something we need to discuss." She put on a look of innocent confusion. "Of course, dear. What is it?" "It's about the engagement ring," I said. Her expression tightened. Tom looked back and forth between us, bewildered. "The ring? What about the ring? It's beautiful," he said, trying to smooth things over. "The ring Mark gave me was beautiful," I agreed. "But that's not the ring I have. The ring I have is a cheap imitation. A fake." A gasp came from Tom. Carol, however, burst into a short, sharp laugh. "Sarah, what on earth are you talking about? Are you feeling all right? That's a very serious accusation." "It is a very serious accusation," I said, my voice level. "Because it's true. You took the ring to be cleaned the day before the party, and you swapped it for a piece of glass." "This is absurd," Carol cried, her voice rising in pitch. She looked at Mark, her eyes pleading. "Mark, tell her how ridiculous she's being. I would never." This was the moment of truth. I held my breath, my eyes locked on Mark. He looked at his mother, his face a mask of pain. Then he looked at me. "Mom," he said, his voice shaking but firm. "Just tell the truth." Carol's face crumpled. The mask of outrage fell away, replaced by pure, venomous fury directed at me. "The truth? The truth is this girl is trying to poison you against me. She's ungrateful and paranoid. I try to do something nice, a family tradition. And this is the thanks I get?" She shrieked, tears of rage filling her eyes. "She's trying to tear this family apart." Tom stood up. "Carol, Sarah, that's enough. There has to be a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," I said calmly. I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop. I placed it on the dining table and opened it. "I have proof." Carol's eyes widened in panic. "Proof? What proof? This is a trick." I didn't answer her. I just pressed play. The grainy, silent video filled the screen. The room was utterly silent except for the quiet hum of the laptop. I watched their faces. Tom's face went from confused to horrified. Uncle Ben leaned forward, his expression grim and stony. And Carol. She just stared at the screen, all the color draining from her face. She looked like a cornered animal. The video showed her furtive meeting in the service corridor. The quick exchange of the box for the envelope. It was undeniable. When the video ended, no one spoke. The silence was heavier, more damning than any shouting could have been. Finally, Uncle Ben spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "Carol, what did you do?" She broke. A loud, ugly sob tore from her throat. I needed the money," she wailed, burying her face in her hands. "We were in trouble. The market, Tom's investments. We were going to have to sell the house." Tom stared at her, his face ashen. "What? Carol, why didn't you tell me? We could have figured something out." "I was ashamed," she cried. "And then, the ring. It was worth so much, and she lifted her head, her face blotchy and streaked with tears, her eyes burning with a hatred that chilled me to the bone. She didn't deserve it anyway. She's not good enough for him. She's not good enough for our family. I thought, I thought she'd never even notice. That she was too simple to know the difference between a real diamond and a piece of glass. Here we are. The confrontation is happening. I feel a strange calm settle over me. Her words, meant to be the final vicious blow, have no power over me anymore. She deserves nothing real, I say, my voice quiet but carrying across the table. It's not a question. It's her own words thrown back at her. Carol flinches. She stares at me, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound comes out. I am standing right here, Carol. I continue. My voice is not shaking. And I am real. My feelings are real. And the pain you caused is very, very real. Mark, who has been frozen this whole time, finally moves. He stands up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He looks at his mother, and there is no love in his eyes, only a profound, bottomless disappointment. You did this, he says, his voice flat. You did this to us. To me. To her. Mark, baby, I did it for us. For the family, she pleads, reaching for him. He recoils as if her hand is a snake. No, he says. You did this for yourself. You lied, you stole, and you tried to destroy the person I love most in this world. There is no us for you to save. The finality in his voice hangs in the air. Tom slumps back into his chair, looking like a man who has aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Uncle Ben just watches Carol, his face a mask of cold judgment. The smug, triumphant woman from the party is gone. In her place is a sobbing, exposed liar. She thought I was worthless. She thought I was a fake. But in her attempt to prove it, she had only revealed her own hollow core. She was the one who was not real. The immediate aftermath was chaotic. Carol continued to sob, a mixture of self-pity and rage. Tom tried to comfort her, but his movements were stiff and uncertain. He looked lost. Uncle Ben finally stood up, his presence commanding silence. He looked at Carol with utter contempt. You have brought shame on this family, Carol, he said, his voice like stones grinding together. You stole from your own son. You dishonored the memory of his grandmother. And you did it out of spite and greed. He turned to Tom. You need to handle your wife, Thomas. This cannot be swept under the rug. Then he looked at me and his expression softened slightly. Sarah, I am deeply sorry for what you have been put through. You have shown remarkable strength. He then turned and walked out of the house without another word. His judgment was clear. Carol was guilty. Mark followed me out to the driveway a few minutes later. I was standing by my car, breathing in the cool night air, trying to process everything. Sarah, he said, his voice raw. I don't know what to say. There's nothing to say, Mark, I replied, not looking at him. We saw who she is tonight. And I saw who you are when you're forced to choose. I chose you, he said desperately. I stood up to her. I'm on your side. Tonight you did, I said, finally turning to face him. But you didn't last week. You called me paranoid. You told me I was crazy. You left me to face this alone, Mark. I had to find a stranger, a security guard, to believe me and help me. The man who was supposed to be my partner, my husband, didn't. Tears filled his eyes again. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making that up to you. Please, Sarah, don't let her win. Don't let her destroy us. She isn't destroying us, I said. And the truth of the words settled in my heart with a sad finality. She just showed us what was already broken. I took the fake ring out of my purse, the one I had gotten from Mr. Henderson's. I pressed it into his hand. I can't wear this. And I can't wear the real one either, even if you get it back. It's tainted. All of this is tainted. I got into my car. Is this it? He asked, his voice breaking. Are we over? I looked at his pained, lost face, and I felt a pang of the love that had been so central to my life for 4 years. But it was overshadowed by the deep, structural crack in our foundation. Trust. I need time, Mark, I said. I need a lot of time. And space. I started the car and drove away, leaving him standing in the driveway, a symbol of our shattered future in his hand. The next day, I got a call from Uncle Ben. "Sarah," he said, his voice formal. "I have spoken with Thomas. Carol has admitted to selling the ring. She sold it to a private dealer she found online. A rather disreputable one, it seems." "Can you get it back?" I asked, my voice tired. "I am working on it," he said. "The man is demanding more money to return it, claiming he didn't know it was stolen. It's blackmail, but it may be the fastest way. Thomas has agreed to pay it. He has also frozen Carol's access to their joint accounts." There was a pause. "She will not be attending any family functions for the foreseeable future. I have made that clear." "Thank you, Uncle Ben," I said. It was some measure of justice, at least. "No," he said, his voice softening. "Thank you. You brought the truth to light. That is a rare and valuable thing." A week later, a courier delivered a small, insured package to my apartment. It was from Uncle Ben. Inside was the original velvet box. I opened it. There it was. My ring. The real one. It shone with a deep, quiet fire, so different from the garish sparkle of the fake. It was beautiful. But as I looked at it, I felt nothing. No joy, no sense of victory. The ring was no longer a symbol of love and future. It was a symbol of betrayal, doubt, and pain. I closed the box and put it in a drawer. Mark tried. He called. He texted. He sent flowers. He begged for another chance. He told me he was in therapy. He told me he was setting firm boundaries with his mother. He said all the right things. But something inside me had fundamentally changed. The girl who had been so desperate for Carol's approval, so willing to make herself smaller to fit into their family, was gone. I had found my own strength, and I wasn't willing to compromise it ever again. I finally agreed to meet him for coffee. One last time. We sat at a small table in a neutral cafe. He looked better than he had a few weeks ago, but the sadness in his eyes was still profound. "I got the money back from my mother," he said. "She had to sell her car. Dad made her. He's not the same. They're not the same." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. I had never wanted to destroy their family. I had only wanted to protect my own dignity. "I gave the money to Uncle Ben," he continued. "He's putting it in a trust for the future. For my kids someday." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Our kids, Sarah." I shook my head slowly. "I can't, Mark." "Why not?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I love you. I know you love me. We can get past this. We can be stronger for it." "Maybe you can," I said gently. "But I can't go back. Every time I would look at you, I would remember that you didn't believe me, that you thought I was crazy. And every time we would go to a family event, I would be looking over my shoulder, wondering what she was planning next. I can't live like that. I won't live like that." I reached into my purse and slid the velvet box across the table to him. "This belongs to your family." He stared at the box, his face crumbling. "So this is really it." "This is it," I confirmed. I stood up. "I wish you all the best, Mark. I really do." I walked out of the cafe without looking back. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was also the most necessary. A few months passed. I focused on my work, on my friendships, on rebuilding my life. I went on a trip with Jess to the coast. We hiked and read books and drank wine and talked about the future. My future. One that was entirely my own. One day, while browsing in a small, independent jewelry store in a little seaside town, I saw a necklace. It was a simple silver chain with a tiny, perfect diamond. Not big, not flashy. Just a small, clear spark of light. It was real. I thought about the money from Mark's grandmother, the legacy that Carol had tried to steal. And I thought about my own savings, the money I had worked hard for, that belonged to no one but me. I walked into the store and I bought the necklace. I put it on. It felt warm against my skin. It was a promise I was making to myself. I would never again accept anything or anyone that was not real. I deserved my own sparkle, and I would be the one to provide it. Carol had wanted me to feel worthless. Instead, she had shown me my own value. And that was a revenge far sweeter than any public humiliation could ever be. She had lost her family's respect, her son's trust, and her comfortable life. I had lost a relationship that was built on a cracked foundation, but I had gained myself. I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my soul that I had won. I thought that would be the end of the story. I truly did. But life has a strange way of circling back on itself. About a year after I walked out of that coffee shop, I ran into David Harris, the security guard from the Grandview. I was at a downtown street festival, browsing through stalls of handmade pottery, when I heard a familiar, low voice say my name. Sarah Miller? I turned, and it took me a moment to place him without his uniform. He was smiling, a real warm smile this time. I was hoping I'd run into you again someday, he said. I always wondered what happened. We ended up getting food from a vendor and sitting on a park bench. I told him everything. The family confrontation, the video, the breakup with Mark, and the quiet aftermath. He listened patiently, nodding in all the right places. I'm glad you got your justice, he said when I finished. You deserved it. He told me a little about his own life. He had left his job at the hotel a few months after we met. The management had been cracking down on fraternizing with guests, and he felt the environment had become too restrictive. He was working for a private security firm now, a job he liked much better. We talked for over an hour about books and movies and the city we both lived in. It was easy. There was no pretense, no history to navigate. When we parted ways, he asked for my number. I gave it to him without hesitation. David and I started seeing each other. It was slow at first, just coffee, then dinner, then long walks in the park. He was kind and funny, and he had a core of integrity that I admired more than I could say. He had helped me when I was a complete stranger, at risk to his own career, simply because it was the right thing to do. That spoke volumes about his character. He never once made me feel like I was too much or that my past was baggage. He listened, he understood, and he respected the boundaries I had fought so hard to build. One evening, about 6 months into our relationship, we were cooking dinner at my apartment. He was chopping vegetables while I stirred a pot on the stove. I was wearing the small diamond necklace I had bought for myself. He paused his chopping and looked at it. That's a beautiful necklace, he said. It suits you. Thank you, I said, touching it lightly. It's my favorite. I bought it for myself. I know, he said with a soft smile. You told me the story. The I deserve my own sparkle necklace. I laughed. That's the one. He put down the knife and came over to me, his expression serious. Sarah, he said, taking my hands in his. I want you to know that you deserve everything real. A real partnership, real trust, real love. My heart swelled, a feeling so different from the anxious hope I had felt with Mark. This was calm. This was sure. He leaned in and kissed me, a kiss that felt like coming home. Life moved on. I got a promotion at the library, becoming the head of community outreach. I loved my new role. It was creative and engaging, and I felt like I was making a real difference. David and I grew closer. We moved in together. We adopted a clumsy, lovable rescue dog. My life was full and happy in a way I had never imagined possible. I rarely thought about Mark or his family. They were a chapter of my life that was firmly closed. But one day, the past showed up on my doorstep. Literally. I was gardening in the small front yard of the house David and I now rented when a car pulled up to the curb. A woman got out. It was Amy, Mark's sister. I hadn't seen her since the engagement party. She looked older, more tired than I remembered. She approached me hesitantly. "Sarah?" she asked, as if unsure it was really me. "I was hoping I could talk to you for a minute." I stood up, wiping the dirt from my hands onto my jeans. My first instinct was a jolt of alarm, a defensive posture. But I took a breath and reminded myself that I was safe. I was no longer that girl. "Amy, what are you doing here?" I asked, my tone neutral. "I know this is weird," she said, wringing her hands. "But I had to come. I have to apologize." "Apologize for what?" I asked. "You didn't do anything." "That's just it," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "I didn't do anything. I stood by and I watched my mother treat you horribly for years. I saw it. I knew it was wrong, but I never said a word. I was a coward. I was so caught up in my own life and in keeping the peace with her that I let her hurt you. And when I found out what she did with the ring, I was disgusted, but I still didn't reach out. I was ashamed. I'm so sorry, Sarah." Her apology was so unexpected, so sincere, that it disarmed me completely. "Thank you, Amy," I said, and I meant it. "That means a lot." I wanted you to know," she continued, wiping her eyes. "She ruined everything. My parents are divorced now. My dad finally had enough. He sold the house and moved into a condo. My mom, she's living in a small apartment across town. She's not well. She lost everything. Her husband, her home, her social standing. She lost Mark. He moved to Chicago a few months ago. He barely speaks to her." I listened, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was just a sad, quiet confirmation of the inevitable. Carol's actions had created a poison that had eventually corroded her entire world. "I'm sorry your family went through that," I said honestly. "We deserved it," she said with a bitter laugh. "Or at least she did, and the rest of us deserved a wake-up call." She looked at me, at my house, at the flowers I was planting. "You look happy," she said. It wasn't a question. "I am," I said, and the simple truth of it filled me with a quiet joy. She nodded. "Good. You deserve it." She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, Mark is still in love with you. I think he'll regret losing you for the rest of his life." I just gave her a small, sad smile. "Goodbye, Amy." She got back in her car and drove away. I turned back to my garden, to the rich, dark soil and the bright, budding flowers. I thought about Mark for a moment, and I felt a pang of sadness for what we had lost, but no regret. He had made his choice, and I had made mine. And my choice had led me here, to this life, this home, this happiness. A life that was solid and true and entirely authentically real. The past was finally, completely laid to rest. The sun was warm on my back, and I had a garden to tend. It was more than enough. It was everything.